Hey, this is Nick from Cameta Camera, and I'm here with Mike from Sony. And we're here to take our first look at the new Sony Alpha A9 camera. Now this is your flagship, full-frame mirrorless camera, and it's basically aimed at professionals who may want to trade up from a 7 series camera, or maybe switch to a mirrorless system for traditional SLR users. And that would be very beneficial for sports, weddings, events, things like that. So there's lots of brand new features with this camera. Let's go over some of the specs. First of all, you've got your 24 megapixel CMOS sensor. Now that's a completely upgraded sensor. Let's talk about some of those features.
Absolutely. So it's one of the reasons why we're able to have the camera be so fast is that it's got an upgraded 24 megapixel backside illuminated and stack sensor.
So
it's backside illuminated the way the A7R Mark II is. So it's able to move the electronics from the front of the sensor to the back. So we're getting double the amount of light of a traditional sensor, but it's also stacked. And what the heck does a stack sensor mean? It means that we actually integrated RAM memory in the sensor itself. So as light is hitting the sensor, it's able to use that RAM to be able to process it on chip instead of having to move that information directly to the processor to be able to process information. So we're able to move 20 times faster, think 20 times faster, and process information 20 times faster than any other sensor that's out there.
So that's going to affect pretty much all aspects of the camera, of all shooting.
And it's the only full-frame sensor to ever have a stacked structure like that as well.
Great. And you also have a new image processor integrated into this camera, correct?
Yes, we do, yeah.
Okay. So those things are going to affect not only autofocus and shooting speed, and let's talk about autofocus first. You've got a ton of autofocus points. I think it's 693 phase detect points, so that gives you a lot of speed and a very wide area.
Absolutely. So 693 focal plane phase detection autofocusing points. So it's the fastest focusing system that we've ever made. It's one of the fastest focusing systems, if not the fastest autofocusing system on the planet. Now, again, it's not as important that there's 693. The fact that it covers almost the entire frame is the really important part, because you'll be able to track moving subjects all the way to the edges of the frame, which is extremely important for especially sports photographers.
So you get a lot of speed in terms of autofocus. What about shooting speed? Now, as I've seen the specs for this, it's 20 frames per second in continuous mode, and that's also incorporating a silent electronic shutter. So that's kind of a game changer, because you can use this in pretty much any locations. If you're shooting a wedding, you definitely don't want to be making a racket, and this fits the bill. Exactly,
and that's kind of the wow factor of this camera, is that we're able to go from a world that's really been fully mechanical, and all the technologies that we've made in mirrorless over the last several years, since 2009, we've all put into this camera. So it'll be able to shoot at 20 frames per second, completely silently, with complete live view. So there's no blackout whatsoever, and exactly what you're seeing when you're shooting at 20 frames per second is a live view of the scene, not the frame before, no blackout. So you're able to have a completely silent and a completely live experience, whereas you've never been able to do that before.
Okay, and just for an example, all right, I'm shooting 20 frames per second right now.
And you can keep doing that.
Now you can add an electronic shutter sound if you wish, and then if you're really stuck with your traditional ways, you can have the mechanical shutter going, and you can have your blackout. And this is not necessarily a disadvantage. Some people just like to have that, so they know they're getting a shot. Like I said, it does take some getting used to.
It definitely takes some getting used to, and it does have a mechanical shutter that lasts 500,000 shots. So it is extremely durable, and it's extremely advanced, even the mechanical shutter mode. And beyond that, even though the camera can shoot at 20 frames per second, since there's no mirror, the camera is able to think, focus, and expose at 60 frames per second. So each one of those shots, it'll be able to focus and expose 3 times each one of those shots. So it'll be able to move and think quicker than any other camera in the world. When you think of mirrored cameras, every time that mirror comes up, there's no focus, there's no exposure, it's needs to use predictive, so it'll think a lot faster than any other traditional camera.
And that's really important, especially when you're shooting sports, any other fast-moving objects. If they're coming toward you and your camera's not able to keep up with the continuous autofocus, then you're going to have quite a number of shots that are out of focus, and that's pretty amazing. 60 frames per second? So 60 times per second?
60 times per second. So your success rate will move to in the 90s or the 100% as opposed to only 50, 60%.
It's a big upgrade. All right, so let's talk about low light capability. We've got a pretty good ISO range. How does that stack up?
It's not something that's really talked about on the A9. We talk about the speed, but when you talk about a camera that's designed for still shooters that are designed for photojournalists, wedding, It is 24 megapixels, and we do have our flagship A7S Mark II, but the low light capability on the A9 is very comparable to what you'd get on the A7S Mark II. So it's some of the best low light capabilities in the world.
And what makes it able to keep up? Because obviously the pixel size on the A7S and S2 are far larger.
Yeah.
How does it manage to give you that low light capability without introducing more grain?
Absolutely. So sensor technology. The A7S Mark II is not a backside illuminated sensor. So this has a backside illuminated sensor. So you're going to get double the amount of light. Double the amount of light, double the amount of pixels. It's a match made in heaven. You'll be able to get almost the same high ISO performance as the A7S II, but with double the resolution.
Great. All right, so let's talk a little bit about video performance. This has 4K.
Yes, it does.
So that's 4 times the resolution of full HD. And if you want to go with full HD, you can also do slow motion up to 120 frames per second. So you can get some pretty impressive slow motion out of this. And full HD for most people is still more than good enough.
Yep.
It also uses an XAVCS format. Make sure I got that right.
Which is super simple, super easy to use, 100 megabits per second. And it's a file that you can just drag from your card, drop it onto your desktop, press the space bar, and it plays. It's no encoding, no decoding. It's very easy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. And then another great pro feature is the zebra function, which is great for eliminating big blown out areas and highlights in your videos. You want to make sure exposure is right. Having a zebra function there is great.
Yeah.
All right, so let's take a look, talk about a little bit about the body itself.
Absolutely.
All right, so we've got something that is made out of magnesium alloy. So that means that the body itself is very tough. Obviously, there's no moving parts inside, so you're going to have much more durability as far as the shutter is concerned. You're not going to have to worry about shutter counts, really.
Absolutely, because the shutter, like I said, the mechanical lasts 500,000, but if you're not using the mechanical shutter, there's no moving parts in the camera. So it'll last however until the A9 whatever comes out that you'll want to upgrade to. So.
All right, and then also as far as ruggedness is concerned, you've got dust and splash resistance. This whole body is weather sealed. Basically what most prospective buyers want to know is to what level. They want to know if they can take this out in a rainstorm and shoot on the sidelines.
So it is upgraded compared to the A7R Mark II and the A7S Mark II. You will be able to go out on the sideline and shoot, in rain and be able to and get great photos. The G Master Series lenses are our most weather-resistant lenses, and of course, all of our G and Zeiss lenses for the E-mount are also weather-resistant. But you will be able to have the durability that you're used to on most other sports cameras from other manufacturers.
Great. All right, on the back here, we've got a 3-inch tilting LCD. That's pretty standard, although it does give you touch functionality if you want to use it for autofocusing. And then you've got an OLED viewfinder, which I assume is upgraded to keep up with the speed of the camera.
It is. So not only did we also added resolution to it, so it's an OLED viewfinder that gives you 3.2 million dots, so a million more dots than what you were used to before, but it is also very, very fast. So the viewfinder refreshes at 60 frames per second, and you can also go to a mode that refreshes at 120 frames per second.
Okay.
So without really sacrificing much quality. So it's not only is it a complete live view while you're shooting up to the millisecond, but it's also very smooth, almost as fast as the human eye. So.
All right, also on the back we've got, well on the top too, we've got a few custom buttons in addition to all these dials. So we've got 1, 2, there's 3.
8 altogether.
4, 8, okay, I'm only seeing 4 of them here.
Because you can repurpose some of the other buttons,
Got it, so let's talk a little bit about those. I mean, obviously those are going to be useful for most shooters. And let's see, we also have some additional dials, well one additional dial here. This is a drive mode, so you can change continuous from high to medium to low. You can do self-timer. BRK, I assume that's for bracketing.
Yep.
And then on the bottom, you can also change the autofocus mode from single shot, continuous, direct manual focus, etc. And that's nice to actually have a physical dial to be able to do that stuff on the fly.
So between your 8 custom buttons and now all the added functionality on the outside of the camera, there's almost never need to ever go into the menu to do anything, because everything that you want the camera to be able to do, you can customize to do it the way you want to do it. You can even set a custom mode where you can set the whole camera up and do a custom recall on one of those custom buttons. So you can change the entire camera's functionality by just pressing one of the custom buttons.
Great.
So.
All right, a couple other quick things here we should show. There we go. All right, we've got a LAN port. We've got a flash sync port for use in the studio. We also have, of course, USB and HDMI on the side, and something that every video shooter needs, a microphone port and a headphone jack.
Absolutely.
So that's good to make sure you have nice professional audio. On the other side, we've got dual card slots, and you've got a little release button here, which is kind of nice. Now these are obviously pretty quick. One of them is quicker than the other, I understand.
Correct. So one of them is UHS 3, so you're able to get blazing fast speeds to be able to utilize the speed and functionality of the latest and greatest SD cards. So you can recover from your 693 frame buffer very quickly at as low as 19 seconds, depending on the speed of the card.
Great. So you need fast cards to keep up with the speed of the camera, so that's important. And then on the bottom here, we've got a brand new battery. A
new battery. So we're not one to really change batteries very often.
Yes.
We've been using the W series battery on the A7 series for quite a long time. And now we finally upgraded to a Z series battery. And it does give you, we say it's double the capacity, but since we're getting more efficiency in the camera, double the capacity on the battery, we're going to get almost 4 times the storage that you would get and 4 times the performance that what you get out of the W series battery on the other cameras.
So if you were shooting, say, in all electronic shutter mode, and you had this battery at a full charge, how many shots can you get on this camera in a single day shooting?
So the SEPA standard, which is a little bit older, says you get about 500 shots. But realistically, in real world samples, and you can see online with some of the professionals that have shot it, you're getting in the thousands of shots. So you can get 3 hours of video, 3.5 hours of video, or you can get up to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 shots depending on how you use the camera.
That's great, and not having to change your battery is of course a big bonus, especially if you're out in the field. All right, so let's talk about a little bit about the cost. Now, obviously this is going to be competing with the real high-end cameras from Canon and Nikon. And we already know the cost. It's going to be $4,500 for the body itself. And that's a pretty significant difference from the upper echelon cameras from other manufacturers. So how is this going to compare to them as far as performance is concerned? Is it going to be right up there? Is it going to be a little bit better? I'm sure you're going to say it's a little bit better. Yeah,
I mean, that's the whole point of this, is that we're able to make a fully electronic camera that does away with the limitations. Even though those are flagship cameras, they're great cameras, but they do have the limitation of being mechanical and actually using physical parts, mechanical parts. So now we're able to move to fully electronic, save $1,500 to $3,000 from those flagship cameras. They'll be able to shoot faster, autofocus faster, expose faster, better video, higher durability, better lenses, better viewfinder, better experience than the other manufacturers' flagship cameras. So it's definitely something that any professional photographer, advanced amateur photographer should really make sure you take a look at.
Well, we've got a crowd of people who also want to take a look at it here at Cameta Camera. We're all pretty excited about the A9, and we hope it is a big success. And it's going to be available soon. You can pre-order it now. And not only that, it also has a couple accessories that are going to be available soon as well. There is a battery grip, which I believe you have right over there.
So this is a very pre-production battery grip, so it'll look slightly different by the time it ships. But it's similar to what we've had in the past, to be able to hold 2 batteries. And it does go into, it has the little chimney that goes into the battery compartment, and it screws on. And what's beautiful about the grip is that it does completely mimic the full functionality of the A9 when you're holding it by itself, as it does in the back. So it does have the joystick, it has the AF on button, it has custom buttons out here, it has the same sensitivity, the same shutter what you'd have here. So it gives you the same functionality, vertical or horizontal. And of course, like we said before, 2 batteries really gives you the ability to shoot, up to, you don't want to really say how many shots, but thousands and thousands of shots by using 1 battery, or up to 6 hours of video.
That's great, and plus it makes it much more comfortable. The body itself is still relatively tiny compared to a pro-sized DSLR, so putting that grip on there makes it
makes you feel more at home, I guess. So,
exactly. All right, and then there's also a smaller grip that's just basically used as a little resting spot for your pinky.
This is something that I've really been looking for a long time, because the camera is kind of small, especially people with larger hands. You do have, the wandering pinky. So when you put this on, you put it on, and then all of a sudden, you have a little home for your pinky. So it's like the perfect fit without adding bulk, without having to add anything else.
Doesn't
so it just
make it
screws
too much
on there
heavier.
very easily.
It's just a little piece of
almost no weight, just a little piece of magnesium alloy. So it's very durable, screws on. And it also works with A7R Mark II and A7S Mark II. So that way, someone that's been looking for a little bit extra pinky room, you can do that now.
Well, you may need it when you're using a lens like the new 100 to 400 lens, which is we unfortunately don't have with us right now, but will be available very soon. So here it is, Sony Alpha A9, available very soon at Cameta Camera in late May. And you can pre-order it now, so head to Cameta.com and get yours, and we'll be looking forward to it.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Thank you.